All right, everyone. I have Meg freaking Boggs here, and she came on the podcast 2 years ago. So I'm super excited to catch up with her. First of all, I just want to say I love your hairdo.
Oh, thank you. It's
I
new,
saw,
last couple
yeah, I
months.
saw it. Yeah, I saw it on your Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Is your hair
Yeah.
naturally curly like that?
Yeah. I've been like trying to like experiment with it and like use product because I've never used product in my life. I've always just like messy bun, go. But now I'm like trying to embrace it and learn about my curls and just have fun with it. It's kind of been part of my journey these last 2 years since we last spoke. Like that was
Yeah,
something I would have loved to do back then that I just didn't have the courage to do. So now I'm like, I feel so like true to myself now.
that's awesome. Yeah, so we're going to dive into it because I feel like, yeah, when you came on 2 years ago, it was a great podcast and you're such an inspiring person to follow. And it's been cool just to see the growth of the community around you. Like I've seen your Instagram grow and just people come out and I always see other accounts I follow reposting you and I'm like, oh, look at her go. Like she's just out there, like, people are just finding so much value in your content that you're sharing. So what has kind of been going on the last couple years that you feel like has inspired this growth in community?
Yeah, well, when we last spoke, I was like my whole account, my whole thing was just I was focused on motherhood. I was a new mom. I had just had my daughter and that was kind of my whole life is I was trying to figure out who I was because after I had her, it was like I was trying to be like understand who I was to be the best version of me for her. And I didn't even know who I was. I was like, well, I'm a mom and that's about all I could say. And so I just started looking for things that made me happy and I found powerlifting and that like that grew so much like in my heart. Like it was something I enjoyed so much and I kept it to myself for a while. I would put it in my stories and like kind of share it, but I was like, oh, I just want to share about motherhood and because that's who I am, that's my identity. But eventually it was like less and less of my identity and I was spreading myself out to other things and opportunities, and it just kind of made me realize that I needed to share those passions and those things as well, that they were just as important. And so I started sharing like little workout videos, little fun challenges, and just sharing my fitness journey. And it was scary for me because I feel like there wasn't much space to talk about fitness as a plus size person that didn't talk about how much weight I was planning to lose, my goal size. It wasn't about that at all. And so it was kind of hard to navigate because people would ask me all the time. I would post a workout video and be really excited about it. And they'd be like, oh, what's your goal weight? And I never really had an answer. And at first it was like, okay, well, it makes sense. You know, they see a big girl working out, like you assume she wants to lose weight. And the more that people started asking me that and assuming that, that's when I was like, I have to start speaking up. I have to start advocating for people like me who just want to enjoy movement for what it is and what it brings to your life instead of just numbers and scales and restriction. And so once I started sharing that, I feel like it exploded. I feel like people started really sharing my content and listening a little bit more. And it's been incredible. Like I've been so excited with all the opportunities that have happened. And I just never would have thought that somebody like me would be given this type of opportunity. I feel like you normally see people who are a lot smaller than me talking about this and then people listen. But if you see someone like me talking about these things, it's like, oh, I don't know if I can believe you. I don't know if I can trust somebody like you. And it hasn't just been in the fitness world, it's been in everything that I do. It could be something about motherhood, it could be something about my mental health. Everything always ends up revolving back to my body size. And so some people might say, well, why do you talk about your body so much if you don't want it to be if you don't want that to be the conversation? Like you're saying we should look at other things other than appearance, why do you talk about it all the time? And it's not so much about me saying it's something that has to be talked about. It's the actual underlying message that needs to be talked about. You know, how we view plus size people in the world and how we assume things about them and their lives. And it kind of holds people back. And so that's why I've been just trying to speak up and advocate and just share my life and share how it's possible for someone like me in my size to be happy and to be successful and to just live authentically as yourself. So yeah, that's kind of been what I've been up to.
Wow, that's so incredible. And first of all, I want to say you're glowing right now. Like you just have this glow about you. Like you can just
Oh, thank
see
you.
this joy in your life, uh, which is amazing to see. And I wish that more people would find that, because our society does kind of focus on a certain, I guess, type or physique, like, and it always changes. And people try, they think that your joy or your happiness is wrapped in a size, and it's not. Like, there's joy and happiness in every person, and it can be, it's like in what you do, like you said, like that joy in movement and moving your body. And health looks different on every single person. Like health does not have a size, it does not have a number. And that's like what drives me crazy, because I had my baby this last year, and I found myself just getting really sucked into the bounce back culture. And I hated, like, now I just like, it makes me cringe when it's like bounce back after having your baby and blah. And I just like, I want to curl up inside, because I'm like, my
Yeah.
body has completely transformed. It's never going to be the same. And I'm okay with that. Like, I just want to feel good in me, in who I am now. Like things are in different places, and they're
Yeah.
not going to go back to the way they were.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I don't want to feel guilty, like in things. And it's such, I just feel like the motherhood community can just really, really prey on, or just like certain like workout and diet culture just really, really preys on women in that area of their lives. And so to be able to follow accounts that have authentic joy and are like keeping it real is so powerful for me, because I found myself having to unfollow people, not because it's like, I don't like that their message wasn't authentic for them, but it just made me compare. It made me feel bad about myself. And I actually like, I don't know. I don't, you can't like buy into any of the diet culture, but it's like nice looking at people who just want to feel strong and healthy and happy. And you are such an inspiration because you're so strong. So I tried doing a push up the other day and I couldn't. I'm like, man, I just want to feel strong again. And I see you just like pounding out push ups. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Whenever somebody tells me, I can't do a push-up, and the first thing that always comes to my mind is that you actually can. You actually can. You just might not be able to do that type of push-up, but you
Right.
could
Yeah.
probably do this variation. And so I always try and like think of it that way, because at some point I was doing push-ups on the wall, and that was just a variation that I was doing because that's what I could do at the time. And then I progressed to doing it at a higher incline. And then I got comfortable with that. And then I progressed. And it's just like, there's so many ways that you can get to your goal. Instead of looking at it as like, I can't do that yet, you can say, well, this is what I can do now. And then one day I'll be able to do that. So just kind of reframing how you look at it might be helpful. But I
Yeah,
know
that's
push-ups are
true.
a big thing. It's like it's a big conversation that I have in my community.
I wonder why
Because it's so
push-ups.
possible. I know. It was like the first time I ever posted a push-up video. It's like the crowd went wild. It was like, what? She's doing push-ups. How is that possible? Because you're not used to seeing that, It's pretty rare, I guess, to see not only a plus size person, but a woman doing push-ups, you know. So
What they call
yeah.
like man push-ups, right? Don't they call
Yeah.
them like man? It's like, come on.
Yeah. I'm like, I just call them push-ups, and then you have this variation and that variation, and they all kind of give you the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I would love for you to just kind of share with us, um, I guess, how you've kind of stepped into just your full authentic self, and like finding your passions and walking in that. How has that transferred into motherhood? How has that transferred into your relationship with your spouse?
Ooh, well, you know, whenever I first started thinking about all these things, like years ago, it's when I first wrote my first blog post and I was just reflecting on everything. Um, I just started deciding to like choose, like make decisions based on what would benefit me. And I had never done that in my life. Every decision I had ever made was about somebody else, what somebody else wants, pleasing this person, making sure I don't make this person upset, you know, doing what everybody else wants of me. I didn't even um, accept the fact that pink is my favorite color until I was 30. I went 30 years saying, no, I'm not a pink person. I'm just not, because I was like, I felt like I didn't fit into the pink, you know, aesthetic. Because pink, you think, oh, like Barbie and like skinny and blonde. And like, that's kind of what you think, like really, really, really girly and feminine. I feel very feminine, but I present my femininity very differently. And so I just always denied that because I felt like it didn't fit. That was one of the first things that I found out about myself, was that I love pink. And then once I embraced that and I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to buy all these things that are pink. Does it come in pink? Okay, sounds great. I want it then. And it's because that's what I wanted and it's what made me happy. And it's those little decisions over time that became bigger and bigger and bigger, to where it wasn't just, oh, this is my favorite color. It was like, no, I think that when we go to the doctor, we should get treated like everybody else and not just prescribe weight loss. Like, and I'm going to stand up for myself when I go, even though every time I do stand up for myself, it's like the most terrifying thing, especially when you're still denied. But like, that's the kind of things that I was doing in my life, probably the last like 2 to 3 years. It's just those little decisions. My hair was one of those decisions where I was like, you know what, I've always wanted this haircut, but I always felt like, well, I can't have that haircut because if I do it, I'm not going to look very feminine. And the most crazy thing about my hair is that once I did cut it, I felt so feminine. I feel so feminine with this haircut, and I feel girly and just beautiful. And like, and it's weird because you wouldn't think that. You would think, oh yeah, it's a boy haircut. But no, like it's because it's giving me what makes me feel so me. It makes me feel like I'm stepping out into the world and I don't have shields over me. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just stepping out and I'm who I am. And if I'm accepted, that's great. And if I'm not, then I'm going to just fight to be accepted until I die. Like, that's just how I'm looking at things. And then when it comes to my husband, um, I've always been very like, oh, don't look at me. Like, oh, let's keep the lights off. Like, I've always been like that. And I could tell that it's always frustrated him. But after I had Macy and we started like, okay, well, maybe it's time to try again. You know, when you're like, okay, it's time to have sex. How are we going to do this? I'm terrified.
Yeah.
So we were like having that conversation and I just felt so like, I was like, I don't want you to look though. If we can just take, my body's so different now. Like my nipples are like 5 inches big. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
I'm just very insecure and they're like dry and crusty. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't sexy. And it was interesting though, because he was like, no, like, let's talk about it. Like, why do you feel that way? And I'm like, well, just, I'm gross. Like, I lost all that weight before I had Macy. And then now I'm like, I gained it all back. I probably gained more back. And like, my nipples are gross. I just don't want to do it. I'm just, I can't. And he was actually the one that was like, well, why don't we just like, let's just lay here and tonight, why don't you just have like one piece of clothing off? Like, why don't you just lay in your bra? Let's just lay in your bra and we'll just talk like that. And I'd be like, okay. And so that's what we did, like one little thing at a time. And then I was like, I finally got comfortable enough to be like, you know what? Like, just like, if you could just put your hand like on my stomach, just place it there. Like, don't do anything else. Like, don't move it, just place it there. And he was like, okay. And so he put it on my stomach. And like, I just got chills when he put it on, because it was just like, oh, like he's feeling like how lumpy and the stretchies. And it's just, I don't know what he's thinking. And he was just talking to me through that whole moment. And it was just like this isn't important. Like, what's important is you, is the person inside. He's like, all of this is just extra goodness that I actually love, and I think it's great, and it's part of you, and that's the part that I love. And so that eventually led to me feeling so comfortable to I walk around the house, naked when we're just around. And I'm just like, it is what it is at this point. And I just think that he saw that confidence start to come out with me, where I wouldn't like shy away, or I'd cover myself with a towel, or I'd lock the bathroom door because I didn't want him to come in. And he noticed those changes in me. And I feel like it made him even more attracted to me, because I feel like when I would just like, he could tell that I was just feeling myself, or like I would be in the mirror and I'd just be like dancing. And I could just see in like the corner of my eye that the way his eyes would look at me was so different than before. I could tell that he would just light up and just be kind of turned on by the fact that I was feeling so sexy and feeling so confident in myself. And our marriage is very different now, because I'm always trying my best to show him that I'm okay with how I am, and that I'm okay with how he is too, because he was kind of self-conscious a lot in the beginning. And after we had Macy and stuff, and he saw me changing, I think that he actually learned a lot from me. And we've had a lot of conversations, and he's been like, I never realized that like I actually thought about these things about myself too. And that I, would kind of cover up and not want to be as intimate, because I felt like, I didn't have a six pack, and like, I don't have rock solid abs. And that, I don't know if that's what you like. Maybe you don't like that. I don't know. But when we started actually talking about these things is when everything changed. Whenever it wasn't like a thing that we keep in the back of our minds that we never talk about. When we actually sat down and I said, I want to talk about my body for a little bit. I cried a lot when we had that first conversation, but it's so important. It's so important. And I feel like we talk about it all the time now. I want to continue talking about it. We're actually I'm starting my YouTube soon, and we're probably going to do a couple episodes on there about just talking to him and what, the change has been for him, and seeing kind of me become so confident and embrace life and myself, and how that's affected him. I'm going on a long tangent right now, so you can stop me.
I love it. No, I'm loving it.
Yeah, life can be so different when you finally stop trying to strive to be somebody else, to be the person that the world thinks you should be, or that your family thinks you should be. That pressure of trying to transform yourself into someone different is exhausting, and it just strips you of life. We only have so much time while we're here. A third of the time we're probably sleeping, another third of the time we're probably working. And so we're left with what? We're left with those little moments where we can either decide to hate ourselves and to spend our time, energy, and money on things that are going to make us appear different than who we are, or we can use all of that time, energy, and money on things that we love and the things that we enjoy, and enhancing our lives. And once I figured that out, and I realized that that was actually possible, even with all the extra noise of people telling me that what I do is wrong and it's dangerous, and that I'm promoting obesity or whatever it is that they want to say. I know in my heart, and I know that my life that I'm living right now is so just pure and what's supposed to be, I guess. And so like anything anybody says will never take that away. And I wish more, that's why I talk about it so much. I wish more women would start realizing that and stop putting so much pressure on themselves to be this perfect mom who, does everything right, who never makes mistakes, who never burns meals, who never turns underwear pink, who never yells at the top of her lungs because she just loses it one day, who cries in the closet, or who contemplates just leaving altogether, who thinks she's not good enough, who thinks there should be a better mom out there for their kids. Like there's no one better than you. And it's okay to know that, and to think that, and to make those choices as a mom, as a wife, as a woman. Make those choices that are going to make you and your family and your kids the best, happiest versions of themselves. Because the moment that we stop doing that, the moment that it starts becoming about what I'm not and what I'm lacking in the world, our kids notice that right away. My daughter, she's only 3.5, and she notices right away if I'm looking in the mirror and she comes and stands next to me. And if she sees me grimace, if she sees me like look a little sad or upset at what I see, she's 3.5. She's already looking at me and going, "What's wrong, mommy?" And that right there is the exact reason why I don't want her to learn any of those things from me. Like, she's probably going to learn them eventually just because of the way the world is, but I don't want her to learn them from me. I don't want her to grow up and be like, yeah, my mom, she always was upset about her body, and she was always pointing things out about her body and just put herself down a lot. And I don't like in you're gonna our kids are gonna internalize that. I internalized a lot of that when I was younger. Anytime my mom would put herself down, I think about it to this day, and I'm like, I don't know how she could have said that about herself. She's an incredible mom. Everything she did just made our lives so amazing, and I'm so thankful for that. So to know that she was putting herself down and thinking she's a bad mom, it's like, if she's a bad mom, then there's no way I can be a great mom. Or if she thinks she's ugly, there's no way I look exactly like her. How I must be like, I must not be that great either. um so just, yeah, just make those decisions and understand that the world is going to be really hateful. The world is going to suck really bad and try to convince us that we're unworthy and that we're making the bad and worst decisions possible. But when you really think about it and you really write down all the things that you love and why you love them, it just, here's the thing that I sometimes do. I don't know if you've ever done like a mood board, but it's where you just kind of get a blank canvas. You could do it either with magazines or you could do it on a computer, like on PowerPoint, and like pick a couple things. Be like, what are 5 images I see that inspire me? It could be anything in the world. It could be a piece of clothing. It could be a picture of your family. Just 5 images that really, really inspire me. And then what are 5 words that I really resonate with that kind of describe the kind of person that I want to be, or the kind of life that I want to live. And then maybe some colors, maybe some like just different things that feel like you. I did that one time not too long ago, actually, a couple of weeks ago. I put this little mood board together and I found out so much about myself. And that's also whenever I was like, wow, I really do love pink, because everything was pink. um, but it just made me realize that, like, wow, like, I didn't realize that that's something I would have guessed that I would have picked a picture like this. But whenever I went to pick a picture like that and put it on there, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like it fit. So that's like a good exercise to do if you're just like in a really bad slump, which I've been trying to do lately. I journal a lot. I write a lot of like just poetry and just randomness, thoughts and feelings. But the mood board somebody told me to do, and whenever I did that, I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. I feel like we need a minute because of like everything that you just said was so good. I was tearing up in there because I think we believe so many lies that I don't know if it's just like in our innate deep down self that everybody just, I mean, we have these lies built up over time, right? Like from the time you're little, like you
Yeah.
see your parents, you saw your mom kind of picking herself apart, um, and you kind of learn to do that, or you just, just things build up over time. Like I have a vivid memory when I was 9 getting made fun of for having a unibrow on the playground. And so I went home and my sister shaved my eyebrows
Oh my
down the
gosh.
middle and like messed them up so bad. Um, or just like being made fun of for like different things, and then you just kind of get these messages along the way that build up. And then you had talked early on about advocating for yourself, right? So then you become an adult in this world and you go to like a health appointment where you're not heard, you're not validated, you're not listened to. And that can carry into birthing, into motherhood. And all of a sudden you're a mom with these tiny humans where nobody's believed you. Nobody believed pain you had. Nobody believed things that were wrong. You weren't listened to at health appointments. And all these things just kind of build up. And it's like, no wonder like the motherhood community can be like such a cruel place too. You can find so much greatness in there, but it's these a group of people just trying to like do the best they can. And you're also so what's the word, like so many people are so easily funded and or trying to like give unsolicited advice, and it just kind of like spirals into all these different things. And it's like, man, like we have to do better. Like we just kind of do a mood board, like do different things to really take that time to find out who you are. Because when you find that out, you're not going to take things personally, because you know that that person who's saying something to you, that's their problem. It's not yours. And you really start to unpack some of that stuff. And I feel like becoming a mom brought up a lot for me, especially in the first couple months. I was so angry and I didn't know where this anger came from. Like my daughter would cry because she's a newborn and I would like be sleeping for 45 minutes and just be angry, not at her, but just like angry. And it was like real anger. It's not like, oh, I'm just tired, I'm whatever. It was like this, like I wanted to throw something and shatter it. I wanted to hear glass breaking. I wanted to like, I used to take boxing and I'm like, I just want to beat the shit out of something right now. Like I feel like I have so much pent up that needs to come out. And it was like, I had the choice to either like be like, okay, what's really going on here? Like where's this stemming from? What's actually the root cause, or to just kind of like hope that it would disappear. And I feel like I did a combination of both. I like kind of was like, okay, I feel like this is kind of coming from here, and some of it just kind of faded and I'm like, whatever. So I know that there's still some work to do, even though I don't feel angry. I didn't really address the issues that came up. But we would just be like so much happier and living in that joy and supporting each other and having that actual community that we're supposed to have and celebrating our differences. And knowing that I'm going to do what's best for my family, you're going to do what's best for yours. And like, that's what's important, is that you're just kind of loving and accepting each other and validating each other in their experiences. So I feel like when you were just saying all that stuff, like so much was coming up of my own journey and like people that I was listening to. And I'm like, I already can't wait to like go back and listen to everything that you just said, because it was so good. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much for sharing all that.
I go on tangents a lot, so.
Well, they're good.
It's my thing.
It's my thing. So I would love to kind of go back to advocating for yourself, because I think that that's like a huge thing. And you've said that you've had to do that at doctor's appointments. And for some reason, we feel like providers are like this authoritative figure that we can't question what they say or fight back for what we feel is intuitively going on or what we know is right in our bodies. So how did you kind of find the courage to, I guess, advocate when it came to your health?
Well, I still struggle with it to this day, but I had a whole gallbladder thing happen in end of 2018, I think. That was about a year postpartum. And I was having like horrible stomach pains and I didn't know what it was from. It was very confusing. Excuse me. And I went to the doctor and they pretty much were just like, yeah, we're not sure. Just take some, over the counter medicine. You'll be fine. And I was just like, okay. And then it got worse. And I was like, well, I don't want to go back to the doctor because the last time they said I just needed to go take like over the counter medicine and that didn't work. And so I ignored it and I was like, I'll just not go back to the doctor. And then eventually it got so bad that I was just screaming, crying because the pain was just unbearable. And so we decided to go to the ER. So we go to the ER in the emergency room. I'm freaking out because I'm just like, something is just not right. Like it's my insides and then it goes up my like side into my back. And like, I just know that this is not right. Something's wrong. And I go in there and the doctor there comes in and he's like, well, have you, overeaten recently? And I said, no. I mean, the last time I ate was dinner like 5 hours ago. Like it's 1 o'clock in the morning now. So, like, no, I didn't just overeat. And he just kind of looked at me like, it doesn't seem that way. And at that time, I wasn't really comfortable advocating for myself. I was still learning. There was a lot of growth that still needed to happen for me. But I went home. They didn't do anything for me. And I went all night until it finally like subsided. And then like about 2 days later, it came back again. And it was like 10 times worse. Like I was like screaming and my mom came and they were just trying to hold me down. And they were saying, we need to go to the ER. Like we need to go now. Something's not right. And I was refusing. I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm never going back to the doctor ever again. I'll die here in my bed. Like I can't do this anymore. Because it wasn't just those times. It's been my whole life that every time I go to the doctor, it doesn't matter what it's for. I'm told that if I lose weight, that everything will just sort of even out and all the numbers will be fine and I'll feel better and blah, blah, blah. And so I was just like, I was done. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And eventually they got me to go to the ER. And it was one nurse that took me back and was like, it sounds like your gallbladder. Maybe we should do an ultrasound. She's like, it happened to me after I had my kids. So I'll make sure that they get you an ultrasound. And we did it. And there was 10 gallstones in my
Oh my
gallbladder.
gosh.
And I had to have emergency surgery and have them removed. And then it gets even better. After that, they asked me to sign the paperwork so that we could do the surgery. I was like on morphine, like just barely hanging on. And one of the things that they had me sign, that they were like, well, in order to do that, we also are going to have to do a liver biopsy while we're in there, where we just take, a piece of your liver and then we're going to make sure that you don't have like a fatty liver. And I was like, what? Why do you need to check for my liver? Like just take the gallbladder out. Like I don't understand why we're having this conversation. But since I was on morphine and I was like out of it, I was just like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But sure, if that's what it takes for me to have the surgery. And so they did it. My liver was fine. Everything was normal outside of the gallbladder. And after that, I just thought to myself, I can never trust doctors. Like I just can't. Like I can't ever go through that again. And so I didn't go back to the doctor until I'd say last year or early last year, right when I think COVID was kind of starting to happen. I went back because my blood pressure got really high. And I think it was because of the stress of COVID, everything was shutting down. My husband had to start working from home. He was worried about getting laid off. And it was just like, oh, I was so stressed at that time. And I was barely making any money at all. I was turning down sponsored stuff left and right. But at that moment, I was like, oh, I really have to start doing all this stuff now. And I went back to the doctor for my high blood pressure. And he was like, not, it was a new doctor that I went to. He was not as like mean about it or anything. He was concerned about my weight, just like every other doctor is. But he gave me the medication for my blood pressure. I did the medication. I went back for my next appointment, and he basically was like, okay, even though I was telling him okay, I understand that I'm here for my blood pressure, but since I'm here, I think it would be, since I think that my stress level and my anxiety is just so high right now with everything going on, that I just probably need to get back on medication. I probably need to get back on an antidepressant and get back on anything for my anxiety, because I'm starting to have panic attacks again. And he completely disregarded that and said, well, once you come back, let's do a physical and just make sure that everything else is good. And then we can talk about that. And at that moment, I should have advocated for myself. But I think that I was just so like, you just get so defeated because it's the same conversation over and over again, where it's like, why can't you just treat me like, pretend like I'm not fat and then treat me like that? Like, treat me like a patient that's not fat. Because anytime, that's the first thing that they talk about all the time. I still haven't gone back. It's been now a year since they told me to come back for a physical. I never went back. And I'm sure like any normal person would say, well, why don't you just go back, take the physical, and then you get your medication? And for me, I just know that it's not that simple. I know the moment that I do a physical, they're going to find whatever it is that they want to find. And then we'll have to go down that route. And I'm still not going to get on my medication, which I know for a fact that if I have that and I can start not having as frequent panic attacks anymore, and I can kind of calm myself down a bit, I really do think that it would be beneficial for me overall. And then we can talk about that. But it's just so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And there's very little times, 2 times in my life in the last year, 2 years, I've tried to speak up, and I've even been like, can we not weigh me today? Like, or if we do weigh me, I don't want to see it. And they fought me on it. I mean, I went back and forth until finally they were like, you can't have your appointment unless you get on the scale right now. Like, we're not having this conversation. And then I gave up and I caved, and I was like, okay, like, I'll step on it. But like, I just don't understand why it has to, every time I go see a doctor, why it always revolves around my weight, and why it can't be about the reason that I'm there. The reason that I'm there isn't always related to my size. And I don't know how else to get this message out there where people would understand that it's a real problem that's happening. And I think it has to do with the whole, there's an obesity epidemic happening in our country right now, and it's all based on false data and things that aren't even facts that are being spread around. And I think that's why. I think it's just the way that our culture is right now. It's we believe that that there's too many fat people in the US, and that something needs to be done about it. And what it really comes down to is the fact that all of the places in our country that are in lower income areas, you don't have access to healthy foods. It's all fast foods. It's all processed foods, because that's what they place the affordable foods for people in lower income. And not even to mention food deserts where there's not even access to hardly any food. It's ridiculous. And but they're not focusing on that. They're focusing on, well, there's fat people, so let's fix that problem, instead of, well, what's the cause of all of this that's happening? And it's not even everybody. Not every fat person that you see is fat because they're lazy and because they eat too much. Like, we're all just different humans. Every human is different. There are people in the world that are just fat, and it's just, that's how their body is shaped. They're not shaped like a Barbie or Ken doll. And there's nothing wrong with that. They should be treated like normal. They should have access to what everybody else has access to. It's a whole bigger systemic issue that is never addressed. And it's insane.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's never really addressed. Like, honestly, I haven't really heard outside of like your account anybody really talking about it. And it's crazy to me, because if it was like, let's say a really skinny person going to the doctor and just being like, I really need to get back on meds, they'd be giving them no questions asked and not even asking. And I know a lot of like thin people that live off of Coke and McDonald's, and they don't care about health foods at all. They do not touch vegetables. And the outside isn't a reflection of the inside. So to me, I just feel like it is completely, I mean, it's unethical and it's mistreatment and bias and definitely not right, especially too when it comes to mental health. Like how could you be denied something for your mental health?
Yeah, it just doesn't, they just completely overlook it. Like it's not important enough. That the important factor is the size of your body. And it's just like, I don't understand that. Like,
Right. Yeah. Well, I think just even having these conversations so that people who are listening, hopefully advocate them for themselves, or if there's people in the medical industry listening, that they're like, oh, like I need to do better at my job. Like we need to do better in our industry. We need to do better in our field. And know that, I mean, there's basic human rights that everybody has, that everyone should get, right? It's like, just treat everybody the same. Like, it's not that hard. So, I mean, that would be very discouraging, trying to find a provider that when you've gone your whole life, just not being listened to and having it just revolve around one issue. And like with your gallbladder, like that's something that they should have caught the first time you were there, because they should have listened to what was going on.
Yeah, all they heard was, I have a stomach ache and it must mean that I overate. They're like, if you overeat or you eat too much fast food, that's what happens. And they just kind of looked at me like, is that what happened? And I was like, no. And they were like, is it though? Are you serious?
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, thankfully that nurse was there the second time too.
I know. She was like my guardian angel at the time.
Yeah. I get really, really, really hopped up on rights and healthcare because I'm super passionate about it. And because also just the systemic biases and racism and everything that we deal with in our country, it's just certain people groups are not heard. They are not getting the help that they deserve. They are not being treated the way that they want. In certain areas, they don't have access to what they want, or medical coverage isn't covering a provider who's actually going to listen, and you can't afford somebody who will. And it's just like this endless spiral. So I like having these conversations just so people feel like they're not alone, that because I don't believe that the change is going to start with the providers. The change is going to start with us demanding better from them. So not supporting a provider who's going to treat you like crap and not actually listen to your needs, then we're no longer going to support that provider. We're going to support a provider who does. And so I feel like the change does have to happen at the lower level. And it's hard though, when you go into like the care that people actually have access to, and again, like what their insurance is going to cover, and it doesn't cover specialty providers and all these different things. So it's like, just we have to demand more, and we have to demand better, and have those conversations. So I mean, I'm not good at advocating for myself either, and I've been in not good medical situations, and I'm like even with our daughter, the first pediatrician we went to, it was like there was a hole in the wall. It was like this like dungeon basically. And my husband's like, we're not coming back here. He's like packing up the baby, and she's like, okay, schedule your appointment at the front, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And Vito's like, we're not coming back. And I'm like, just act like we will. And then I'll just never call them again. Instead of being like, actually, we're going to go with somebody else. Like I couldn't say that. Like, I'm like, okay, bye. Like, I'll just never come back here again.
I understand.
I don't know why it's hard.
I know it is hard. It is so hard to advocate for yourself. I have, we have what is it? On the 30th of this month, I think we have a fertility appointment for the very first time. And so I'm like, I'm really nervous, but I found them through some of my followers in my community, they were like, this is where we went, because I had mentioned it a couple months ago, and a couple people sent me this clinic. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll look into it. And we finally made an appointment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's happening. Because we've been trying for almost 2 years now. And I just have very irregular periods. And so it's so difficult to plan, and so I was like, well, let's just go to see a fertility doctor and just see what happens. So we made the appointment. We actually made an appointment back in March or February, I can't remember. But what happened was we had that big snowstorm here in Texas. And so everything got shut down. And that was during our appointment. And so we had to reschedule it. And of course, it wasn't until April.
Yeah.
But
that's so exciting though. Are you planning on kind of sharing your journey on Instagram with it?
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah, cool. I'll be sharing all of that. I'm just so nervous because I haven't been back to a doctor since that whole fiasco. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, at least like you got a referral. It's nice, like if you know somebody who went there. And I mean, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but I'm excited to hear how it goes.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm just, I just don't know what to expect, I guess, because I don't really know too much about, all of that. So I don't know like what the technical options are or anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I don't know tons about it either, but I know like, I mean, they'll walk you through it all and they're going to run tests probably on you and your husband and then try to figure out like what's going on. And then like the best plan, but that's so exciting. Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited really to follow on your journey. So I want to dive in before we wrap up to your book. So did you decide to write this book or were they like, Meg, you got to write a book?
Well, it's a funny story because I actually, one of the chapters in the book, I ended up extending that chapter, but it's actually a blog post that I wrote when I first decided that I was going to start sharing fitness content. I ended up writing this blog post and I put the blog post up and it was up there for like, I don't know, 5-6 months. And then I get an email that's like, hey, we're from, Simon and Schuster publishing company. We saw your blog post. We think it's amazing. And my blog post was called Fitness is for Everybody. And I guess they just loved that. We ended up talking about it. We got a phone call and they were like, just tell us more, like what you're thinking and what kind of made you want to write that. And so what I normally do, I word vomited everywhere and just like went on a tangent. And within like 3 days, I had a book deal. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening right now. And then it all just went super fast. They were like, okay, this was like December of 2019. They were like, okay, well, starting January, February, go ahead and start the writing process. And then we kind of made a whole timeline. And then COVID happened in March. And my stress level just went poo. And I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. Like I'm actually writing a book during a pandemic and this is wild. But I ended up writing it in like between February of last year and then I wrapped it up I think in July. So it was really fast to write the whole thing. I was like staying up all night some nights. And I wanted it to be not just like this is how you do fitness. Like I didn't want it to be like, oh, this is just like a training guide, a bunch of like informational stuff. It does have a lot of like great information in it, but I also wanted it to feel very storytelling like, to share parts of my story about why I even started exercising, how I ended up fixing and healing my relationship with food by ditching diet culture and embracing intuitive eating. What steps I took for that. I talk about motherhood. I have an entire section of the book that's all about, it's called Give Moms a Freaking Break. It's time we give moms a freaking break. And it just talks about all the changes, you know, that our bodies go through and how we don't have to like bounce back right away, that there's so many different options for postpartum women, to embrace movement without feeling pressure to drop 50 pounds immediately. And I even have a little training guide in there. I have a push-up progression that if anybody wants to learn how to do push-up, there's a progression in there. And yeah, it's very personal to me. It's like my little baby now. And I'm like, I can't believe that it's about to be out there in the world. I do swear a lot, just for warning. I have a potty mouth like you would not believe. And I was like, is this okay? Like, this is how I express myself sometimes. And so just beware of that. But I'm really excited about it. It's comes out April 27th. And I'm really nervous, but also equally just out of my mind excited, because I just wish that something like this type of book was available when I first started my journey, to just kind of hear from someone else's perspective and story about how I don't need to shrink myself into nothing, that I can grow myself into something. So
yeah, that's amazing. Where can people find it?
Well, you can find it in a lot of different places like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, things like that. But on my Instagram page, in my bio, there's a link, and then it has like all the different places that you could buy it or pre-order from.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you. How fun. Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I can't believe this has happened to me. I'm like, I feel so proud of myself, and just proud to like represent like not only plus size women, but just like women, you know, who want to embrace fitness without feeling so much pressure. You know, from all the different programs out there are always putting so much pressure on step one, take a before and after photo. I've never understood why that's step one. Why is step one take a picture of yourself?
Right. Yeah.
I don't get it. I talk a lot about that in the book too. Like, if you're about to start a fitness journey, if you're about to start getting back into movement, like, I have some journal prompts in there, like, answer all of these questions first. And if you feel confident in your answers in them, you're ready to move on and to, you know, exercise and work out and things like that. But if there's a question you feel kind of like you're struggling with, like, yeah, I don't know if I can make a goal that's not appearance related. Could I? Maybe I need to kind of revisit my relationship with my body first before we dive into that. Maybe I need to look into that a little bit more.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that perspective. As somebody who, like, I struggled with an eating disorder for 13 years, and I had to ditch the scale at one point. And I remember just the goals of like, once I reach this number, I'm going to be happy. Once I reach this number, I'm going to be loved. Once I reach this number, like, my ex-boyfriend wouldn't have broke up with me if I was this number on the scale. Like, all these lies that have nothing to do with that. And it really is building that relationship with your body. And you have to be happy with yourself. You have to embrace yourself. You have to be ready to move because it feels good, to move because it brings you joy, because you want to feel healthy and happy. I this last year, I finally got rid of all the jeans I haven't fit in 7 years, because I was like, I'm gonna wear these again one day. Then I'm like, finally was like, I'm not, and that's okay. Like, that's fine, Liz. You can buy new jeans.
Yeah, that's huge.
You're not gonna wear those. Yeah, I mean, I got rid of so much stuff. Which was, it felt good though. I mean, first of all, I hate jeans. Like, who invented jeans? They're the most uncomfortable pants in the world.
I know. I love a good jegging. Like, it needs to stretch. It needs good stretch. I need to squat deep in them. If I can squat deep in them, those are a good pair of jeans.
I know. My sister like wakes up and puts jeans on and gets ready for the day. And I'm like,
oh my gosh,
who are you? Like, who just wears jeans every day? And I know there's a lot of people listening that probably wear jeans every day, but
yeah, I
can't do it.
I can't either. I'm a leggings and joggers and
yes. Thankfully, there's cute options of those. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your heart, your passion, your energy with us today. And I'm going to link your book and where to follow you in the show notes. What's your Instagram account for everyone listening?
So my Instagram is at meg.boggs. It's the same for my TikTok, if anybody has TikTok. And then my Twitter is meg5boggs, and then my website is megboggs.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. This was so fun.